Okay, guys, business is simple, but it's not easy. Today, I want to talk to you about uncomplicating your business model. So, there's a popular phrase that I share with my clients quite often, and that is, you are making this too hard. And as I spend time with entrepreneurs and business owners each week, you're making this too hard is something that I find myself saying over and over again. It usually comes across as some version of this. So, okay, guys, business is simple. Create something people want, sell it for more than it costs to make, and repeat. Or leadership is simple. Hire great people, ask them to do things, and hold them accountable for doing them. Or finance is simple. Price your products and your services appropriately, collect money on time, pay your bills on time. And I could obviously go on and on and on. But as simple as this sounds, entrepreneurs always find a way to complicate it. They just always do. They say things to me like, "But Chad, you don't really understand my business. It's not like all the other businesses. This is much more complicated than you think." Or they'll say like, Chad, I'm so much different than other people. I don't really, my brain works in a different way. I have to do something, and that's fine. And I understand that. My brain works a little bit differently than anybody else's. But after working with something like 180 businesses across dozens of industries over the past 20 years, I know that even if your brain works differently, and even if you do things differently, it just isn't the case that your stuff is so much different than everybody else's. Okay? But here's what I found. Entrepreneurs, small business owners, simply love to overcomplicate things. And this happens for a couple of reasons, okay? The first, and I've talked about this on other videos, and I share this a lot with my clients, is this concept called complexity bias. So complexity bias is what we call logical fallacy that leads us to give undue credence to complex concepts. So if we're faced with two competing hypotheses, just because we have this complexity bias, we're more than likely to choose the most complex one because often we're like, it can't be that easy. And that's usually the option that has the most assumptions, has the most regressions. So as a result, when we need to solve a problem, we might ignore the simple solutions, thinking, you know what, that's just never going to work. And instead, we may favor the complex ones. So the first reason that we overcomplicate things is complexity bias. The second is that we are stimulation hogs, okay? The human brain is a stimulation hog. It likes being busy. The brain keeps busy by understanding, solving, deciding, debating, arguing, influencing, growing, opining, or whatever, whining even. It's always working. This means that even if something is simple, our brain concludes that it can't be simple and proceeds to make it much more complicated, which adds more stimulation. And it does this so we can tell ourselves and prove to ourselves that it really was complicated. We're smart when we solve it, even though maybe it was really simple. So the second reason is that we're stimulation hogs. Now, the third reason is that over the years, we've begun to place, and hopefully it's ending maybe a little bit, but we place an undue value on multitasking. It's even in job descriptions. It's even, must be able to multitask, multitasking a plus, etc. But multitasking triggers these reward systems in our brains that make it feel like we are these heroic overachievers, right? So, but multitasking, especially constant multitasking, is more likely a symptom of burnout and a sign that you're on the road to burnout than it is a sign of productivity. Okay, so if you're finding that you're having to do lots and lots of things and switch back and forth and do all of this task switching, that becomes very challenging for us, and that actually leads to burnout. And I think I've talked about task switching in another video or on an article that I've written, but the idea is our brain, every time we have to move from one task to another task, that takes brain power. It's like turning your car on and off all the time. If every time you got to a stoplight, you turned your car off, and I'm not talking the fancy new cars that have been designed to do that, but if you turn your car off and then you have to turn it back on every time to go, it uses undue energy, okay? So killing distractions and single tasking might take more discipline, but it's more effective. So it's also much simpler. we work on one thing. And one thing that I talk to my clients about all the time is if you find that you're being heroic, that you've had to make a heroic action to get something done, you're probably underachieving somewhere else, or you've probably made a mistake earlier somewhere else. So we can't place so much value on this heroic achievement. So those are the three reasons, okay? First, the three reasons that we love to overcomplicate things. Number one is our complexity bias. We like to make things harder because it makes us feel like we're actually accomplishing something. Number two is we're stimulation hogs. We need something to do. And then number three is that we place this weird value on multitasking. So we've added this value of just doing things all the time. There's a really cool quote by a guy named Andy Benoit, and he says, most geniuses, and I'll read it, especially those who lead others, prosper not by deconstructing intricate complexities, but by exploiting unrecognized simplicities. And I love that. I'll read it again. Most geniuses, especially those who lead others, prosper not by deconstructing intricate complexities, but by exploiting unrecognized simplicities. Love it. So, what's a smart, complexity-loving, multitasking, valuing, stimulation hog to do to uncomplicate their lives? The key here isn't to add things and create new processes and systems. The key is to take some things away. So here are my top 5, not 10. 10 would be too complicated. My top 5 things that I encourage my clients to do to stop doing, that I encourage my clients to stop doing to simplify their businesses. Okay, here's the top 5. Number 1, stop measuring everything. I had a client who was running a small business doing property management in a small town in the Midwest, okay? He brought to me, he's like, Chad, we know every metric in our business. I said, oh, that's just great, man. And he proudly showed me like the most extensive tracking spreadsheets that I've ever seen in my life, that he used to track everything from how long it took a customer to be called back to the exact amount of toilet paper used during each stay at one of his properties to the average temperature that guests kept their units' thermostats set at each month. And by the way, to do this, he had to use expensive integrated software system that was installed in each home, right? And on and on and on. And while that sounds awesome, and I can geek out on that stuff as well, and in fact, if I had a gigantic Fortune 500 company or Fortune 100 company where my productivity, my profit depended on me making marginal changes, little small changes to get little small amounts of profit out of it, I might even be into that. But I know most small business owners don't have to track that, okay? You don't have to track all of the minutia. So what was interesting with my client is, as awesome as it sounds, while he was tracking these little minutia items, he was ignoring all of the things that mattered, like things like simple things, like gross profit. How much money do I have left over after I sell a product to a customer? And then he also lost things of like cost of goods sold percentages. What's the percentage that I am paying to make money? So he lost track of the big stuff and he really focused on the little stuff. So the lesson here, number 1, is that you need to measure only what really truly matters. And in small business, that's kind of easy. And what I mean by that is we don't have tons of metrics, right? We have very simple financial metrics. How much did we sell? How much did we spend? How much did we pay our employees? How much money do we have left over, et cetera? What percentage of our goods sold did we versus revenue did we pay? Okay, that's really pretty simple. And then other measurements, maybe we do other things for clients or whatever, but a lot of those other measurements don't really matter. So to me, I think you have to measure only what really matters. So that's number 1. Stop measuring everything. Measure only what matters. Number 2, stop just taking money, okay? When a business is small and growing, we will take money for just about anything. If I'm a one-man painting company operating out of my truck, I'm going to say yes to just about any kind of work. It'll have me running all over creation. It'll have me working on low-margin jobs to make a few bucks here or there just to kind of fill the coffers. But if I get focused, for instance, if I'm this painter and I get focused on only doing interior and exterior repaints of houses that are over 3,000 square feet, which are typically much higher margin than the deck that I'm going to restain or the accent wall that I'm going to paint. And oh, by the way, they take a little bit longer and they require lots less running around. I've both uncomplicated my life and I have made more money. So it's really important for us to get focused on our key profit makers. Don't do the little minutia just because it makes money. Don't take money just because it's money. Okay? Making money, I've said this over and over again over the last 20 years. Making money is not the purpose of business. Making money is required. It's compulsory. So once we get out of our heads that we have to make money anyways, then really where we need to spend our time is how to make our money. And I believe that we try to make our money and we do the best job of making our money when we focus on our key profit makers. So that's number 2. Stop just taking money. Get focused on your key profit makers. Number 3, stop winging it. Okay? One of the greatest joys of entrepreneurship and self-employment is the fact that when we own our own business, we get to decide what we do every single day. Okay? Now we can work on a client thing if we have a deadline. Maybe that squeezes our time a little bit, but essentially we can operate however we want. No one's tracking whether we clocked in at 8, took our hour lunch, and clocked back out at 5. And while this freedom is awesome, if it's unchecked over time, it can create super big problems. Okay, so I find this in my own business. You know, when I get down, like right now, I only coach 2 days a week. 2 days. So I have Monday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, where I have no structure unless I put it there. There's no coaching calls. There's no required meetings. I meet with Odd on Monday mornings. But all of that extra freedom can create really big problems for me. Whether that's laziness, whether that's fear and anxiety, whether that's guilt, whatever it might be. So the solution here is to purposefully add structure into your business. So to purposefully put structure. So for me, coaching Tuesdays and Wednesdays primarily, some a little bit on Thursdays, I need to put structure on Monday, structure on Thursday, and structure on Friday. Even if I decide that I'm not working on Friday, I need to put some structure into that. Okay, so if you're having a hard time deciding what to do first when you add structure to life, I would recommend that you create a task management system that you look at on, say, Sundays, and then you calendarize the blocks into each week. Matter of fact, I know I did a video on this called the Sunday Planning Session. Okay, so if your staff's not getting things done, even though you talk with them multiple times each day, that's something that I always run into with clients. Like I say, hey, you should have a regular meeting with them. And they're like, well, I talked to them all day. And I said, well, multiple times each day is all task talk. What if we schedule a mandatory daily huddle with a standing agenda to talk about what needs to be done each day? So add structure where you find that you're feeling that things are complicated. Add some structure by way of scheduling your day, blocking your time, blocking your tasks in, and things will start to uncomplicate themselves. Now, that's an interesting phenomenon. Here's what I believe. I believe that's primarily because action, moving toward a task, tends to make it simpler. Ruminating and thinking about this task over and over again, time after time, is what tends to make it more complicated. So instead, move it toward action. Action moves us towards simplicity. Okay, so make structure your friend. That's number 3. Stop winging it. Make structure your friend. The 4th one, and this could come across as sacro-religious, but it is this: stop thinking so big. And I know that the Tony Robbins world and the motivation world and the hustle world will tell me that that's not the right type of advice. But here's why I think that. So here's the thing. While big visions and dreams can be exciting to us, the truth is that if something is too big or too far away, it's difficult for us to stay focused on the goal. So part of this is because the goal may literally just be too far away. It's too long. We can't get excited about it. But part of it's also that when we set large goals, we are requiring ourselves to also have an equally large belief system to support it. And that belief system is something that we develop over time as well. It doesn't matter how much we want it or how much we proclaim it. All that matters is how much we believe it. So it's this true belief that affects all of our actions. So if we can't truly believe it because it's too far away or too big, or we don't really believe that it's actually going to happen, it's never going to happen, to take place. And here's the thing. Big goals are harder to believe, and then they're harder to accomplish. Okay? Yeah, it's all steps, and you break it down. I get it. But big goals are harder to believe, and thus harder to accomplish. So here's my recommendation. Set a smaller goal, accomplish it, then set another smaller goal, accomplish it, and then do this over and over again. This allows you to gain momentum so that the big stuff will come easier over time. So that's number 4. Stop thinking quite so big and think medium, or maybe even think small. And the fifth and final one, and I already mentioned it back before, is to stop multitasking, okay? You have heard that multitasking is bad for you. We've all heard it. I've said it in here, but new studies show that multitasking actually kills your performance more than almost anything else and may even damage your brain. Okay? So every time you multitask, you aren't just harming your performance in the moment. You may very well be damaging an area of your brain that's critical to your future success at work. So on top of that, it's complicated. Our brain has to switch back and forth between tasks. We talked about task switching. And every time we switch, it uses that precious brain power to disengage and then to engage in the next task. So if we complete one task at a time, preferably the most important task, not the most urgent, the most important task, then our brain power is conserved and we're going to be able to more effectively and efficiently engage the next task. So that's the fifth one, is really just do one thing at a time. So let me review those for you. 5 ways to simplify your business and your life. Number 1, stop measuring everything and measure only what really matters. Number 2, stop just taking money and get focused on your key profit makers. Number 3, stop winging it and make structure your friend. Get in there and make the day work for you. Number 4, stop thinking so big. Think medium or small, so that we can build on those medium, we can build on those things. And then the 5th one is stop multitasking and do one thing at a time. So there are the 5 things that you should do in order to uncomplicate your business model. If you'd like to take the time to think of 5 more to feed your need to make this more complicated, go ahead, okay? But leave the rest of us simpletons out of it, please. All right, guys, that's it for today. I hope you have a great week. I'll talk to you soon.